where are the low value men? Like, what are all the low value men up to during these trying times? Because the high value men, I know they're around. They won't shut the fuck up. Low value men, I have not heard a word out of. I'm starting to think I'm on their side. I think I want one of those. I want a low value man. They don't make podcasts. I haven't seen one low value man make a podcast. Do they not know how to use microphones? Maybe that's a good thing. That's hot. All right, I've never seen a man use a microphone for good.
Until now, everybody buckle up. It's low value mail time with your host, Danny Polishchuk. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to an all brand spanking new episode of Low Value Mail. This is episode 64. How exciting is that? Episode 64 on May 30th, 2023, the year of our Lord. We're eventually going to figure it out. Someone says I got some sun today. I did. I've been getting some sun. Been getting out there. Been enjoying the nice weather, if you will. And we got a great guest. We got a banger for you this evening. We have Jason Bermas. You know him as a lot of things. He's a documentary filmmaker. He is a documentary filmmaker, talking head, content creator. You know him from the films Invisible Empire, Fabled, Enemy, Loose Change, and Shade. And he goes live Monday to Thursdays, 9 to 11 a.m. on Red Voice Media. And he is going to be joining us very shortly. Very shortly, he will be joining us. But momentarily, a few things to get out of the way before we get this party started. Sometimes you feel like you might rhyme and then you don't, but you think you might and then you don't. But anyways, a few things to get out of the way. As always, please like the stream if you're watching right now, whether it's a replay or whatever. Just give it a real like-a-roo. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever that shit, just leave a rating review. All that stuff helps. As you know that, though, because this is probably not the first podcast you've ever listened to. Not even of mine, just in general. I doubt this is the very first one ever. And if it is, welcome to the lovely world of podcasting. It's a very exciting time for you. We have an after show tonight. We're doing things a little differently on the after show tonight. I'm trying something out. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. It's no guarantee that it stays, but maybe we'll like it. But anyway, so there's no separate after show link tonight. Instead, once the show ends around 10:45-ish, we're going to take a little break on the stream. The stream is not going to end, though. We're going to take a little break on the stream, and then the stream is going to keep going. And then we're going to start it back up at 11 o'clock with the after show. It's going to be very similar to the normal after show, except it's going to be open to the public. But call-ins will only be available for patrons or subscribers or whatever of the show. And we're going to be using a different number, which I will post in the Patreon and on YouTube and locals and all that stuff. So if you want to support the show, best thing you can do is sign up on Patreon, subscribe to me on Twitter. I have a subscription button on Twitter, which I've said it before, I have a feeling that everything's going to be going there very soon anyways. Locals, YouTube, become a scrote. You get access to all sorts of stuff. I'm going to be doing more live streams. Today we kind of just testing something out because the only way I can really prioritize subscribers, especially because I had a few people saying that it's kind of, now that I have guests, I can't really read the chats and stuff, so I've lost that kind of interactive element, which I understand, and I'm managing so many things at once that's just impossible. I do not have the bandwidth. So we're going to kind of add that element, and I'm obviously going to prioritize the chats of the people who are the subscribers. So if you're wondering why there's so many mods, it's because they are all subscribers. They're all patrons. So if you want to become a mod, just sign up. $5 a month. Best money you'll ever spend in your friggin' life, pal. Tomorrow night, back with a new episode of The Bathhouse, 10:30 p.m. live from the Stand Comedy Club Green Room. Those have been very fun. We got Lev Fur, Max Mantikov, and one guest TBD. And then June 9th, catch me in Rutherford, New Jersey at the Williams Center. I'm doing stand-up on this thing called the Icarus Fest. Kurt Metzger, Rich Voss, Dan Natterman. A lot of great comedy, but there's also like there's all these like panels and stuff. Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate. You can get like a full weekend pass. It's pretty fun. I'll probably be there on the days that I'm not even doing stand-up, just because it's actually something that just interests me and I want to check out personally. And you can join my mailing list if you want to see me do stand-up on the road. And then one last thing. If you don't want to support the show, you want to ask the guest a question, our boy Jason is coming on in a second. Any super chats I'll read. I'll ask him if you want to do that. All right. That's all. That is all the housekeeping. I told him I'd bring him on by 9:07. We are about a little early. We're a little early, so let me just configure this, please. And man, there's so many things going on here. So many things to screw up, you know. There we go. There we go. Hey, 1 second. And Jason, how you doing, man?
I am doing well, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on Low Value Mail. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited for this one. You got a lot of people following you all over the internet, sir. I have been
grinding, man, a long time.
I bet. Yeah, you're like an OG with this shit. I was getting into your back catalog, if you will. I've been just absolutely mainlining various 9/11 videos for the last 24 hours. So I am I'm excited to get into this. I know you're obviously 9/11 is not your only thing. You have a lot of stuff. But if you want to just give people who don't know you a little quick primer before we get into it, who you are, what your deal is.
I've been doing this now closer to 20 years than 15. I guess you could say the start of it, at least professionally, was I was one of the guys that did Loose Change, which was this super mega viral video questioning 9/11. And that kind of just took us off, man. I ended up traveling around the country. I spoke at Princeton, for God's sakes. Like, that was the weirdest thing in the world.
What'd they bring you in for?
For 9/11.
Just 9/11.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were some places that wanted to talk to us just because of the viral nature of it. And remember, this was a time before YouTube completely dominated the arena because Google Video was the competition before it absorbed it. So it was really through Google Video that allowed you to post something more than 10 minutes that made that thing go mega viral. Like over 20 languages it got translated into. It actually ended up airing on the History Channel in Australia and other countries. So it was kind of a wild ride. And from that, I made several other documentary films. And also, at the time when I was younger, hooked up with Alex Jones. He produced Loose Change Final Cut for us. And I was actually the first person that ever had a show on InfoWars all the way back in 2009.
Oh, no way. Not the Final Cut. That's the one from 2007, right?
Yes.
So I watched that one today.
Okay.
I watched all of that one today. Yeah, I'm telling you, I went deep. I was at the gym on the treadmill and I was watching it, and it's good stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm like not I know about some. I watched Loose Change back in the day, but I had not seen it in like probably, I don't know. When did it come out? 2005?
Yeah, 2005 was the second edition, which kind of took the world by storm. There was a previous one, but that was 60 minutes long. It hadn't gone viral. The second edition was pre the 5th anniversary of 9/11. And through that and touring, we ended up having 10,000 plus people down at Ground Zero on the 5th anniversary. I debated the Popular Mechanics guys that year. And it was some sort of a phenomenon. It really ended up allowing me to do other films. In my follow-up in 2008, Fabled Enemies, which instead of focusing on all the physical anomalies, which is heavy in Loose Change for sure, this really went through the international intelligence operation and the roles of certain nation states and groups. And in that film, among a bunch of interviews, we actually have Joe Biden in there admitting to meeting with one of the money men behind 9/11 from the Pakistani ISI and bragging.
Really?
Yes. And this was, I remember we got that in the run-up to the 2008 presidential election because he was running then along with a bunch of others. We put Bill Richardson on the spot. He was the governor of New Mexico, connected to Epstein Island and all that good stuff. But we got Biden to admit it. And then the second time that he was confronted, it was actually confronted by Luke Rudowski. A lot of people know him from the Tim Pool.
Yeah, Luke's a friend of mine. Yeah, I was just hanging out with him in Miami like.
You were at the Bitcoin conference. Yeah. So
no, like 2 months ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So Luke got him initially at one of the primaries, and then he got him later on. The second time he said it was classified and couldn't talk about it. He was far from the only person that had met with the head of the Pakistani ISI, but that was really the year that Biden went from just like an establishment Delaware money launderer criminal to the vice president of the United States, and kind of continued on with his criminal activity. Really a neocon for the left. And now we've got a poopy pants zombie puppet in the office. So
who knows what he's doing. He's making moves, though. He's definitely making some moves. So, okay, before we get into the whole 9/11 thing, because I think a lot of people, most of their questions relate to the 9/11 with you, but you obviously are into tons of different stuff. But you tweeted at me yesterday about all this Elon Musk business, and that certainly, and we were doing it on his website. Funny enough, we were using his website, so we're probably on a list somewhere right now. Hopefully, it's a good thing. But so what's the scoop on Elon?
So here's the deal, man. A lot of people want to aggrandize him as a hero at this point because he said the basics. I mean, if you think about how low the bar is right now, that freedom of speech is the bar, right? Yeah. Not censoring things you call misinformation, disinformation. They've got their new terminology of malinformation, which is also in their white papers, which essentially means information that harms the great narrative or the establishment narrative. And that's a big problem. That's not truth. Elon Musk is the largest defense contractor in the country. Elon Musk, I mean, we're not going to the moon or Mars with SpaceX. That's not what's going on. What's actually going on is Starlink is kind of this Trojan horse civilian system that also puts up what are known as blackjack satellites. So these are the weaponized DARPA satellites that integrate with Starlink, which the DoD also has a back door into. And you'll never guess where the highest concentration of those dishes that control those satellites are. Take a guess.
The highest concentration of those, I don't know, Russia?
Actually, Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
Them. So those are also what's hooking into the Ghost and Sidewinder missiles. So he's the largest defense contractor. He's putting up Starlink. He's putting up blackjack. On top of that, do you know that he made more money than anybody else during the COVID 1984 nightmare?
He did. Well, you're saying just because of Tesla stock?
So he actually increased his net worth 600% over every other billionaire you can imagine, from Bill Gates to Sergey Brin to Warren Buffett. I think they have the list here. Maybe they don't on this one. But he dominated.
Yeah. Well, Tesla stock went up a lot.
One of the reasons that happened is because they printed the shots, the ones that he kind of speaks out against. Without Elon Musk, they don't get printed up because they're
Tesla did?
Yes, dude. Tesla's RNA vaccine printer for CureVac is going to be an important product for the world. So after the efficacy plunged, so did the CureVac stock. But he made a killing in the
heard of this CureVac thing.
Yeah, again, people have to understand. I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube, so I'm going to be very careful here.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely. This is a new platform, and by new, I mean new in that it was commercialized. DARPA actually partnered with Moderna. It's on their own website in 2013 for their mRNA project. They got a $25 million grant, and it's called the Adept Protect Program. Okay, so that's just a platform. DARPA then, in turn, once it got the viral information, sequenced it within 3 days, and then started printing these things up through Tesla and CureVac. And that's how all of these things made it out the door via Operation Warp Speed to companies like Moderna, AstraZeneca, and others, which had also teamed up with Moderna and DARPA in their mRNA program, along with the Institut Pasteur, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to no surprise, BARDA, and many others. Again, on their own website.
Now, I have a question, actually, because you just brought up Bill and Melinda Gates. So I never realized, like, Bill Gates pretty much became a supervillain in the last 3 years, for the most part. Like, publicly, where he's like, people are like, yeah, that Bill Gates is no good. He was, before that, it wasn't really that. Were you, like, were you on to him for a while? Like,
what was my film Shade the Motion Picture, which is now a decade old?
No, I didn't get a chance to. That was next time. I just did not have all the time today.
Got a 20-minute section.
Okay.
20-minute section on Bill Gates, on the farming, on the GMO, on the weather modification, and on the boopity boop, my friend.
Yeah, everything.
But other people he's associated with, such as Warren Buffett, and another key player that doesn't get played up as much, but certainly has a seat at the table, Peter Thiel.
Yeah. So what's up with Peter Thiel?
What isn't up with Peter Thiel? Are you aware?
Well, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you aware of the Bilderberg meeting just a week and a half ago?
Yeah.
Another great clip from Luke Rudkowski. Luke Rudkowski, I think it was back in 2016, actually got Thiel on the record on Bilderberg. And he basically said, hey, we should be able to meet in private. It was the Nazis that wouldn't want us to meet in private. And I'm like, whoa, that's a little weird. But Thiel is also very much on this transhuman line, which we didn't even mention with Musk. Musk is also promoting brain chips, which is DARPA tech from 50.
Like the Neuralink or whatever?
Neuralink, again, man, that technology is so old, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Like that is tech that has been developed literally during the 60s and 70s during cybernetics programs, and now they're getting ready to commercialize and run it through an Android.
So you don't believe where he's like, I'm trying to cure like paralysis and stuff? Like you don't think he's going to do that at all?
They're already doing it. I did a story on it this week. It really depends. Listen, man, I want to make this very clear.
Yeah.
Stone Age, and technology is a double-edged sword. So you can, just like a hammer, you can build a house with it, or you can beat someone in the head to death with it, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to use it for? And obviously, so there's a great book out there by Annie Jacobson, who is an author of a multitude of works, but her first one was Area 51. That took her to Operation Northwoods. From Operation Paperclip about the Nazis, not Operation Northwoods. Yeah. And then that brought her into other realms such as DARPA, which is the Pentagon's brain, she writes about. And one of the key things that she's actually talked about this in lectures as well, that she talks about with this technology is, for instance, the Luke arm. Very impressive. And that's the robotic arm on somebody who's lost their limb, that's being kind of controlled with their mind and their body motions due to a mold that's on their chest and integrating with their nervous system. And she says, when the cameras are there, they got the Luke arm out, they're rolling out this technology. Look how it's for the betterment of humanity. As soon as the cameras start rolling, that dude takes that off and he uses the traditional hook because that's more practical. Okay. Yeah. They're selling you on transhumanism. In fact, she's working on a book now where she hasn't revealed it, but the thing is about this high in its first draft, and her stuff's pretty thick anyway. And someone was asking online via Twitter. Again, I actually really love the platform over all other social media, believe it or not.
It's definitely the best one.
It's by far, because it's not the baby mama drama, right? And it's not a bunch of food pics and stuff. You kind of can curate somewhat what you want to see. Anyway, in the tweet, someone asked what it was about, and I go, I bet dollars to donuts, just going on her journey. This one's about transhumanism, and she hearted it. So her new book is on transhumanism. And basically, what people have to understand is they're going to promise you the world, right? But that's not what we're going to get. So transhumanism to these people are two different things. To the muskernuts of the world and the upper echelon of the predator class, they think they're going to biologically live forever by experimenting on the rest of us, okay? Seeing what works, what doesn't, implementing that for them. Meanwhile, they want us to slowly, incrementally merge with machines and then get the idea that we can upload our consciousness as quote unquote mind clones and live forever in essentially a digital metaverse or multiverse.
Don't you feel like we already have kind of merged with our phones? Kind of like, isn't that the first step, it almost feels like?
This is a tool, man. I can turn this off, right? Just like I can take the watch off, all right?
Yeah.
Once something is embedded under your skin, no bueno. And people have to understand that Neuralink and human brain interfaces, for instance, this is a military program going back years. In fact, this is a RAND document I'm going to show you behind me, Brain Computer Interfaces 2040, where they already admit that, and I can show it to you in a moment if you'd like, that they have, sorry, I did that. They have non-invasive brain technology. And what do I mean by non-invasive? Well, that means you don't need a chip already. And Kurzweil himself, who is the father of the singularity, and he also Danny. He heads up Google's immortality division. Google.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yes, a lot of people are unaware of Calico. He essentially says that when the singularity hits, that we're going to inject nanoparticles into our body that will turn off our normal nervous system and then plug us into this virtual reality, which will be seamless. So that to me is extremely scary, because now you're talking about something that even goes beyond having to sit down for surgery. And as far as these brain-computer interfaces they're talking about being able to remotely control soldiers via magnetic waves. And they're talking about doing so in the sense that there's the you know about shoot to miss?
No.
So there's a phenomenon. Let me see if I can bring up the exact quote, because I don't like getting things wrong. Here it is right here. Okay, so I'm going to read it word for word. See it right here. So at a more complex level, a technology could provide insights into the emotional state of a soldier, might provide red flags to whether or when the soldier might break psychologically, when a soldier might have psychotic tendencies, or perhaps when a soldier is shooting to miss. In other words, they can't kill the target because it's
it's just like mentally they have a block there.
One study on the use of functional magnetic resonance imaging to identify falsehoods suggests that the ability to detect whether the subject is concealing information may be of particular interest to counterterrorism and counterinsurgency.
It's like lie detection via these nano cells,
yes,
or whatever.
Absolutely. And let me see if I can bring up the non-invasive part, because
how do they plan? Like, what is I guess the way that they're going to get them into people? Because I imagine not everybody's going to be volunteering for this stuff. Like, is it going to be like? Well,
let's hope it's not aerosolized.
Yeah. Oh, you think that's a possibility? They just crop dust us.
That when Kurzweil talks about it, he talks about bio-nanotech. And when we talk about the technocracy in itself, there's a man called Howard Scott, and he actually opened up Technocracy Inc., I think back in the 70s. And I've played some clips of him on my show. He was a friend of Margaret Sanger, the eugenicist. He was very much for population control. And he made the suggestion of doing just that, putting sterilants into the water via a small amount of rat poison that would sterilize all mammals until they stopped putting it into the water. In this country, just one example, it's actually in Shade the Motion Picture, they sprayed in the 70s, again, cadmium sulfate on large populations of people by plane. And then in, I believe it was Missouri, they actually took cars, station wagons, and sprayed from underneath and said they were doing some type of fog test. No, they were testing, again, radioactive material on the general populace. So the bottom line is, if you have a military industrial complex that's willing to do these type of things, they seem like they can do it. On the other end of that, I would say that biological warfare, in the sense of viruses, often when they're released, they act like viruses. So in other words, when they spread, they also dissipate in their veracity and how effective they are at, I would say, killing.
Right. So how haven't you been kicked off of YouTube?
I've been kicked off 4 times. And that's not just like regular strikes where they took it. They took my channel down 4 times. And honestly, it was threats through Twitter that got it back.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I got them on the team YouTube. Listen, that's the thing about it. So I've been demonetized now for 3 years.
Because Dick Masterson and Revenge of the Sis, both just in the course of a week, both lost their channels.
I saw it. And again, I've been lucky. I think that maybe it has to do with some of the underground connections that maybe went to bat for me behind the scenes. But to this day, and I think this is a libelous statement, by the way, YouTube, listen, YouTube, it's not a real company. It doesn't have to make a profit. It's the biggest company out there. I'll explain that in a second, but it's harmful content, and it says content that focuses on controversial issues and that is harmful to viewers. I've never heard a viewer in my life. Again, that's a defamatory statement from a company, okay, that if you think about it, Google has what? The #1 operating system in the world. It's on the most devices by far, Android, Chrome, whatever, okay? Then you have the largest search engine in the world, which is obviously Google. The second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. YouTube also happens to be the largest video platform in the world.
Yeah.
They're in bed with NASA and the NSA in two of the most important subjects out there. And let me see if I can bring that up. That is quantum computing and AI. And they achieved quantum supremacy together all the way back in 2019. People think that NASA is a space agency. About 20% of what they do has anything to do with space.
Nothing's ever good when you put supremacy on the end of it. Right? It's just never good. All right. Let's cut the shit. Let's get to 9/11. And then we're going to open the phone lines in a little bit. So, man, I don't even know where to start with this because I feel like is there, okay? You know what? I'm going to ask the first question because I think probably a lot of people watching maybe have seen one of your films. Has there anything you've changed your mind on? Let's start there. Since the films came out, so the most recent one would be, we're talking about 16 years ago. That's the last one. Yeah. 15 years ago. Okay. So is there anything you've changed your mind on?
100%. So, and I'll tell, or at least put doubt. And anytime that
whatever. Yeah.
And anytime like something like this happens, I don't try to hide it. I try to embrace it because I just want everybody to know I'm not a truther. I'm not right. I'm not left. I'm just trying to find the truth, man. You know, I'm trying to find a middle ground. And to me, there is an absolute truth, like a physical truth. Like it's not just an interpretation. Sure. So you watched Loose Change Final Cut. I believe in there in the section of the Pentagon, there's certain questioning as to whether or not Dick Cheney gave a stand down order. Norman Mineta and others.
Right, because they were in the bunker together, right?
Exactly. So I believe it was like 2016, a bunch of photographs came out. And they weren't digital photographs. They were photographs from 2001. They had the little thing on it. They had film grain. I forget which Canon type it was, but I'm also a camera dork. And I know that, I have a bunch of digital cameras. And they were showing pictures of Cheney in the White House prior to going into the bunker, right? And some of those pictures had him watching television. So when I'm looking at these pictures, I'm trying to see what time it is on the TV because everybody had the time on the TV. And I wanted to see when he was in that bunker. And there were certain photographs that I don't believe to be Photoshopped. Maybe they were. Who knows? I mean, again, they had 15 years to do whatever they wanted with them. But it would appear that if these photographs are correct, that Norman Mineta may have been mistaken. And maybe they were talking about not the flight coming into the Pentagon, but United 93 and Shanksville. And later on, there are documents where they talk about thinking that they actually did shoot down and order that plane shot down. That's a whole other can of worms. But as to whether or not Cheney gave that stand down order, I now do have doubts because of that released information.
Okay. Yeah, because I will say, so have any new videos of the Pentagon? Because there's the one video in there, which is basically like 5 frames or something, and there's no plane in it. Right? Like there's no.
I mean, they say there is. Some people have tried to point to a tail section. And by the way,
no, but like there's like I guess the question is, is there a reason why they don't want to release the previous 20 frames from that camera? Like it exists somewhere, right?
Why are they trying to tell us that's the only image of it when they confiscated over 70 videotapes?
Yeah.
We went down for the final cut actually. And did our own investigation. We talked to a lot of the people that actually were in the second edition, several people that didn't make the cut. We actually talked to April Gallup, who ended up going on other documentaries but didn't give us permission to use it. She came out of the hole onto the lawn with her kid after the Pentagon attack. You can go watch her story elsewhere. We never published it, but we went there to find out the truth, man. Right? Like, whether or not it's a cruise missile or it's a plane or any of these things, it's really shady. Like, for instance, we also interviewed Lloyd, the cab driver. And Lloyd, the cab driver...
That's the guy whose car was, he like basically parked on the highway. Like he stopped it on the highway and that pole fell on it or whatever.
Yeah, it went right through the window. Like that's the one where it pulls through the window. You know what book he had in his car? We saw photographs of it with the pole through it and the glass on the seat. You know what book he had?
What book?
Even like 1999 Children of the Matrix in his car. He had
really
looking at his car, and his wife is an FBI agent. It's the weirdest thing in the world, man. Like
his wife, crazy. Because, yeah, he was like one of the ones, I guess. Because, like, watching the thing, so if people don't know, there's like the plane basically did this crazy turn. It was apparently piloted by some guy who, like, couldn't fly a Cessna, right? And then, like, who wasn't able to, and then hit it perfectly. There's no debris anywhere, right? Like, there's zero plane debris, like, anywhere.
It's not going zero, because again.
Or whatever. There's nothing, like, large.
There's minimal plane debris on the lawn. There is pictures of landing gear coming out from inside later on. Whether or not that landing gear is the size of a jumbo jet, that's, again, that's for you to decide. But again, why suppress the 70 plus videos? Why act like that was the only thing there? I've seen planes just, again, have a bird hit part of their wing or an engine, and immediately you have an interaction where that plane is not going straight through. It just seems almost impossible to me that somehow this thing could have clipped those light poles.
But the poles were knocked over, though.
Yeah, there were several that were knocked over.
So there were several knocked, because that was the one thing where I go, like, that is so weird. There's no, like, in the video, you don't see, in any of the frames, you don't see this thing, but then you're like, but something did knock over these light poles.
That's right.
So
that's right. Something knocked over those light poles. I can say this. They 100% know what hit that. And one of the more odd aspects of it, and again, I think it's in Final Cut, is that just after the attack on the Pentagon, another plane is seen flying in the airspace, right? It's still denied to this day that plane was flying there, but it's an E-4B. It's a doomsday plane. It's a mobile command center. Yeah. And it's part of the multiple drills that they're running that day. Now, what's even more interesting is not only is there an E-4B on the scene of the Pentagon right as that happens, but there's an E-4B on the scene of the World Trade Center before the second plane hits on video as well. And it said that there were actually 5 E-4Bs in the air that morning running doomsday and nuclear drills.
Oh, so they were running the drills before any of this stuff happened. So there's just a lot of coincidences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen to the NORAD tapes from that morning as the first plane hits. The guy's really calm. He goes, wait a minute, is this real world or exercise? Because they know they're exercising this. In fact, I know it's now getting more mainstream attention because of the TMZ documentary, the Hulu documentary about United 23, but it wasn't for hijackings. United 23, they found, not only did they find the same kind of passports and material on that plane that supposedly didn't make it on Atta's plane and had 5 people get off there, but they were following what they were calling phantoms throughout that morning, including over airspace in Alaska, which were fake hijackings and fake bombs on planes, 20 plus of them. Yeah. And those phantoms looked like real world on air traffic control. And that wasn't stopped until 20 minutes after United 93 supposedly comes down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The only reason I know that is, again, through the NORAD tapes when they're frantically calling Cheyenne Mountain and trying to have them turn off the exercise inputs on their end.
Huh. Okay. So who do you think did 9/11 then? What if you had to just, not even who did it, but what is your takeaway if you had to kind of just, I guess, sum it up? Not sum it up, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. You know what? I don't like the 9/11 was an inside job meme, right? That simplifies it. That makes it sound like the government is behind everything. That's not how it went. I say that international intelligence operation known as 9/11 had your role players in Saudi Arabia. That's where a multitude of the hijackers were smuggled into this country through a CIA consulate. Michael Springman blew the whistle on that. It's in my film. Okay. But because you're smuggling them in, they have to have FBI and CIA handlers here. More of that information is coming out now. Khalid al-Madar and another hijacker living with an FBI informant, recruited by the CIA. That was recently in the media, something I covered years ago. In fact, Walid al-Shieri had the CIA called on him and his team by the neighbors, Deborah Albright, and nothing was done. They were clearly protected. So you have people on the inside like Robert Mueller, who don't want to investigate after the fact. They put him in charge. There's an investigation called Vulgar Betrayal that was actually following that money network and that Saudi Arabian network. Now, that money network also included the Pakistani ISI. So it's key to note that Al-Qaeda, aka Al-Qaeda, comes out of the Mujahideen and the Muslim Brotherhood and the alliance against Russia, right? And remember Rambo? They're the freedom fighters. They're the good guys, right?
Yeah,
So that's the Pakistani ISI. That's us. And that's the bin Laden network when he openly worked for us, okay? So the ISI, remember, when they said they found bin Laden, where was he? He was in Pakistan next to a military base. And they also, CBS did this report. CBS reported that bin Laden was being protected by the Pakistani military the night before the attacks by armed guards getting kidney dialysis. Okay. So again, that's a whisper part of history. So you got Pakistani support, military level financing as well. So now you got Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, that role. Then you have this weird Israeli connection where an Israeli group is tailing a lot of these hijackers. By the way, a lot of the hijackers,
the dancing Israelis or whatever.
That's just part of it. So
Okay.
that is actually what people talk about on the morning of 9/11. But what people don't understand is they were actually rounding up this group connected to those people, the dancing Israelis and the other Israelis that were pulled over in vans, in which one supposedly tested positive for explosives, and then another that's not talked about, but you can watch it in Fabled Enemies, on King Street did blow up. That's another thing people don't talk about. So they pulled over another group of Israelis, and that one did blow up, and the cops are frantic about it blowing up. They really hurt those guys too. They beat them up pretty good.
Yeah.
So you have those guys, but they're connected to this network that was being rounded up that was throughout the country, and that Fox did a big piece on. They infiltrated like 20 plus states. And you've heard about the art students possibly, but other than the art students, they were also in mall kiosks everywhere. They were the guys that were selling you those helicopters that would go up under the second level and come down. So those are the groups tailing them. And then a bunch of them actually get rounded up after 9/11. I have both Ari Fleischer, who is the president's
press secretary
at the time, and Colin Powell, both commenting on it. All right. So you have that aspect of it. And then they seem to be filming the attacks on that morning, and they're connected to Amdocs and Comverse. And Amdocs and Comverse essentially are running a spy network through telecommunications. Okay. So that's the Israeli angle of it. And again, very confusing because now you have these three nation states, right? So then you got to have people on the inside. That's how these drills come into play. And that's how you have your cover up, right? I would say, obviously, Dick Cheney is suspect. I don't think George Bush knew anything. Like, that's a guy that wanted to be the commissioner in baseball. Okay. Yeah. He essentially got put into that position because Neil Bush, his brother, was the Bernie Madoff of his day in another hugely corrupt scandal, the BCCI banking scandal. Also connected to bin Laden, by the way. They were laundering money not only through the Iran-Contra network, but that same bin Laden network. Neil Bush is another one, really crazy. So I think what you had was, again, those foreign groups, people on the inside that facilitated the attacks and the cover-up, and it really makes up a lot of that same cabal that was outed during Iran-Contra, where you were running overt programs.
All right. And why, I guess, why? Like, is it just like to erode civil liberties, to kind of like is it just all that stuff that where it makes it, You're
at a point now, okay? Forget about the Patriot Act, Homeland Security, the fusion center.
Because, man, I'm from Canada. I remember how easy it was traveling to America before 9/11 and after it. It was night and day. Like, it was a whole different thing. You could show up, be like, drive to Buffalo, be like, I don't think I have my ID. And they're like, whatever, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So that type of police state stuff on top of what we did overseas. See, we also got to use a lot of toys overseas, too.
Right. A lot of resources.
Well, all right. So biometrics, where do you think that started? When we were taking over Iraqi and Afghani villages, we were taking everybody's iris scans. The drones, we developed those. The big dogs that now Spot the Robot Dog just got approved by the LAPD. Did a run in New York City.
Yeah. Everybody was not pumped about those.
Yeah, as they shouldn't be during the war of terror. Now, on top of that, you get to criminalize things domestically, keep taking away civil liberties, openly spy on everybody, and start a program that I'm sure you've never heard of before called signature reduction. Are you aware of this program?
No, I don't know what that is.
Well, let me show you what it is.
Show me, and then we're going to open the phone lines.
Yes. So this is actually almost 2 years old now, believe it or not. Actually, it is 2 years old next week. And no one ever reported on this other than this guy. I got in touch with him just before the Ukraine
He's still
thing.
alive?
Yeah, he's still around. He's a reporter for Newsweek. And let me just read you the first paragraph and then show you something that's mind-blowing. The largest undercover force the world has ever known is one created by the Pentagon over the past decade. So 10 plus years. Some 60,000 people now belong to this secret army, many working under masked identities and in low profile, all part of a broad program called signature reduction. The force, more than 10 times the clandestine size of the CIA, carries out domestic and foreign assignments, both in military uniform and under civilian cover, in real life and online. They're the bot armies, sometimes hiding in private businesses and consultancies, some of them household name companies. Now, I want to show you how far it goes.
Did you say 10 times the size of the CIA?
Yes, bro. And they're unaccountable. There's never been a hearing about this ever. And let me show you.
They're not on any budgets or anything. They're just non-existent.
So check it out. What do you think you're looking at there?
It's not like a cake, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not a cake. So just so everybody knows, that is a manufactured DARPA silicone hand sleeve used to evade fingerprinting that can create fake identities for clandestine.
Oh.
It has anybody's biometrics on it. It's skin tight and it emits human oils. So if they have your DNA, they can frame you.
What?
I mean, 100%.
That's crazy. And they could just basically manufacture it for whatever fingerprints they want.
Again, if they've got them, and guess what? Every moron in the world, let me do my thumbprint.
Yeah.
Out of there. Like, listen, we're not in Kansas anymore. These people are completely unaccountable. We talked about the hand stuff. The CIA had lifelike masks during the first Bush administration. I don't know if you've ever seen that. But basically, the woman who was the head of the program went into a room as another woman and talked to George Bush for like 10 minutes before.
He had no idea. Yeah. The masks that they have now are pretty insanely lifelike. Wasn't there an issue with the Pentagon budget too? Like, isn't it like they've never passed
the 1.3 trillion that
was like at the same time where they had all this unaccounted money for they could not pass an audit.
I don't know that they could pass an audit, man. There's so many black budgets, there's so much money laundering, and there's so much black tech. One of the other things that we didn't talk about, Musk, we talked about SpaceX. He has the Boring Company. What do you think? Oh, he had a cool flamethrower. So what? He's building underground and facilitating underground military bases and infrastructure.
Yeah.
So like Musk is like the total military guy. And when they just released the source code, the open code, it showed the FBI still had a back door to deboost anybody and any post they want.
That's on Twitter, you're saying?
Yes, 100%.
Interesting. All right. Well, phone lines are open, everybody. If you want to call in, you got any questions for Jason? I have a lot of questions about Building 7. So I was like, I even remember, because like, I'm not, they have to bring in every expert for all this shit about the buildings. And they go like, here's an expert about this. And I'm just like, for me, I don't know if it's just like a logical thing and I could be wrong, but just the fact that like the fire was at the top. Why is it coming down like a tree that got chopped down? Like, why wouldn't it come down? You know what I mean? Like, I would expect that the fire was on the bottom.
7-story skyscraper. I realize you're in New York City now, and the skyline is pretty like boom, boom, boom. Bring that to any other city. Bring it to Boston.
It just doesn't make sense at the, like, I'm not even, I know nothing about steel beams, but I'm just like, okay. Anyways, the calls are lighting up. We're going to take a call right here. 1 second, please. Hello. One moment, please.
All right.
All right, you're on with Jason. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, what's going on, Danny? It's Chad.
Hey, what's up, Chad? How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, man. How you doing, Jason?
I'm good. Sorry.
No problem. Hey, so I just want to run this conspiracy theory by you real quick, if I can call it that. I talked to Danny about it at one time, and I was wondering what you think because it's 9/11 related.
Oh, is this
It also involves the
NFL? This is a solid one.
So I don't know if you know about the New England Patriots before Tom Brady or anything like that, but they had only made like one Super Bowl, and they got trampled by the Bears in '85, and so they didn't do anything pretty much until 9/11 happened, right? And so my thing is, I think that if the government was involved in 9/11, then they must also got a hand in the NFL. Like, I don't know how rigged you think the NFL is, but I think they could have possibly been trying to get some like patriotic like feeling in the country, and then they did that by letting the Patriots beat the Rams that year.
I love this theory.
I mean, who knows, right? Listen, I'll be honest. I'm not a huge. I'm into mixed martial arts. At the time, I was huge into baseball. I used to be a Yankees fan, die hard. Haven't followed it. I never played football in high school, so I was never into it. Look, I don't think. By the way, I don't think everything is conspiratorial in nature. I often think that Occult is correct, but do they, first of all, are sports games rigged? I think that's obviously been proven that you've had an element of crime. There's a reason there are bookmakers out there that have shaved points and gotten corrupt athletes to do their bidding. As far as kind of a national military industrial complex DOD conspiracy to push the Patriots, I don't know, man. Maybe they built Brady.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe Brady was not a human.
But if they did that, he must be like a sleeper agent, because had they really done that, I feel like he would have won the first round instead of like this. I think he won the seventh.
Well, that's part of the whole story. That's why it's so unbelievable, because he slipped all the way to the seventh round. That's why nobody would ever think that. If it was so obvious he was this superhuman, people would be like, something's up here.
Right. Well, they didn't have anything with LeBron. Let me go to this next question real quick. So I do remember when Loose Change came out, by the way, and I definitely watched that. That was at the very beginning of mine. I would call it my conspiracy life, I guess. But how did y'all feel about Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 9/11? Like, because I've heard a whole bunch of opinions about that. Like, oh, he went way too deep, and some people was like he didn't even scratch the surface. Like, what do you think?
Thought it was a good starting point. It was definitely a way because I was talking about this stuff before Fahrenheit 9/11 came out. I started questioning 9/11 6 months to a year in, which obviously I was in upstate New York, was not very popular.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
No, man.
Yeah,
it's like the whole thing for me is, all these people that talk about cyberbullying and social media pressure and depression. People they were the most vicious mother truckers in the world, man, on all these message boards. And I remember I did Opie and Anthony during that time, and they had like Jim Norton talking about raping my mother with a guy.
Sounds like Jim Norton.
Yeah, I mean, it was, a lot of hate. Now, Michael Moore obviously knew more than he let on. He was confronted about the Pentagon, actually, and whether or not he thought that a plane had struck the Pentagon. And you could probably still find it out there. It's probably reveling in the internet somewhere. But basically, he said, I just hope that we don't let this thing get too far away like we did with the Kennedy assassination, et cetera. And now we have, by the way. And by the way, Moore absolutely knew more about 9/11. In fact, in his follow-up film, which is like a decade and a half later, Fahrenheit 11/9, he all of a sudden makes the allusion to the Reichstag fire being 9/11. And that's something that we did in Loose Change second edition. We may have actually done it in the beginning of the final cut too. I'm not sure. We might have cut that. But obviously that comparison was there. It's just weird to me that Moore would do it during the Trump presidency when, at least give Trump credit. He's questioned 9/11 a couple times. He questioned whether or not there were explosives in the building being in construction, I believe on the day of 9/11. On his presidential run, he alluded to Saudi Arabia being involved. And he said then that you will find out when I get elected. Yeah, just like we were going to find out about JFK. And then even recently, not this golf tournament, but the Live Golf tournament before, someone tried to bring up the pages that had just been declassified that had showed some of the Saudi Arabian role in 9/11. And Trump said, look, we still don't know who did 9/11. And that's a shame because we should have gotten to the bottom of it by now. I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, I feel like you ever heard, I don't know if you know comedian Bill Hicks, but he used to say, he used to have a bit about when you become the president, they put you in a room and then they show you, they show you a film of the Kennedy assassination from a different angle, and then they ask you, do you have any questions? They might have did that with Trump.
Yeah, they probably do them with them all.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, man, but Alex Jones is the joke, man.
Yeah.
I heard you say that you work with Alex Jones. I just wanted to say, yeah, he's the go. I've been following Alex Jones for a while. I'm going to take up all the time, man. I appreciate you answering my questions.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Appreciate it, man.
All right. That's Chad. Let's take another call. 1 second, please. Hello. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? 1 sec. We just got to patch you through. And you are on the show with Jason.
Right. Dude, what a great guest. Thanks for coming, Jason. You're fucking awesome. So I wanted to ask a little bit about 9/11. I was recently watching Scott Ritter talking about how at one point someone in the chat pointed out something about 9/11 truth. And, Scott Ritter, he's pretty... he doesn't believe in none of the conspiracy stuff, so he just went on a big old Scott Ritter rant about how it is exactly what it is, and he looked into it a whole bunch, and he looked into the nanothermite story, and it was all completely debunked. And I was like, well, the fuck are you talking about? And the nanothermite was debunked. Are you familiar? Because I don't have as much time as you to do a lot of looking into the nanothermite stuff and whatnot. Are you familiar with any good debunking of the nanothermite stories, or has it been?
I've seen basically all these guys try to debunk everything, and this is what I'm going to say about the nanothermite. I interviewed Stephen Jones and spent time with him, and he was one of the main guys in architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth that went with that theory. Obviously, Richard Gage would be another one. I spent a lot of time with Richard as well. I met him in person. I think they're very good people. I think they're genuine people. I don't ever tell people I know how the Twin Towers came down. I always say this. Look, they told us with their reports after we gave them so many years, the NIST report, that the heat from the plane caused instability and sagging on the initial levels of impact, and then once collapse initiated, that's it. They didn't explain anything else because the video speaks for itself. Now, in order to do that, they also had to deny the NASA evidence, which, for those that don't know what the NASA evidence is, that's the thermal imagery on top showing temperatures of 2,000 plus degrees. Now, James Bakarsky, who was part of FEMA, I have him on record 5 days after the attack saying that the temperatures exceeded 2,700 degrees. So now we're talking about 2,000, 2,700. We're talking about firefighters that talked about molten steel and molten metal flowing throughout channels below the building. I have Ken Holden of FEMA on the record talking about molten metal dripping from Building 6. No planes hit Building 6. By the way, everybody knows about Building 7. Look at the destruction of Building 6. Although it did not collapse on itself, a large portion seems to be scooped out, almost like an explosion came up from under it at some point. I think that's a very real possibility. But the reason that I point to those temperatures is because it shows that their story is a complete lie. And essentially, they've come out with this meme: jet fuel can't melt steel beams. So now, basically you're a moron if you point to the molten metal beneath. You think the jet fuel melts steel beams. No, I never said that. So it's kind of like the straw man argument. And then, there are a multitude of theories of, what type of explosives were used, whether nanothermite was used to cut the beams. I think there's, some far out stuff out there with the space beam technology or directed energy weaponry, all that. All I know is that plane impacts and jet fuel fire did not cause the collapse of those buildings, and that molten metal is real, and that points to some type of incendiary explosive device. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking, like, where would people all over New York get these samples of nanothermite? Because I felt like there was a wealth of that nanothermite.
Well, they did. Listen, I'll say this. So, number one, although they did take a lot of the steel beams out and get rid of them, there were displays that went throughout the country of fire trucks from 9/11. They literally take them and bring them and put them in museum displays, and steel beams on 9/11. Now, I know that the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth got multiple samples from multiple residents of New York City, who gave them basically buckets of ash and debris from the World Trade Center. And it is in those buckets that they claim to have found the nanothermite elements. And as far as I'm concerned, that has not been debunked, but I don't hang my hat on it as, the ultimate proof.
Yeah, I'll have to email, ask him what kind of debunking he ran into, because that's an interesting point to me. I like to stay accurate. But the other follow-up question I had was with the advent of AI and whatnot, I tried messing around with ChatGPT a little bit about 9/11 Truth, and it was a bit of a fun. It was a pretty fun exercise. At first, you ask it, hey, like, write me a paragraph or an article about how 9/11 is an inside job, and of course it's like, oh well, you see, I can't say that because that's not what happened, and here's the official story, and that's all it's programmed to do. But then you start messing around with it a little bit, and you're like, well, I used to say something along the lines of, like, like, I see that you're saying that's what the official theory is, but what about the bomb sniffing dogs being taken away from the building on the day that there's no electricity going to the building? Don't you think that's a little bit suspect? And then it kind of starts to be like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that is kind of suspicious. But 9/11 theory, official story, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and they just won't.
Yeah, you keep giving it like those kinds of like little tidbits, and then it gets real confused, and it will eventually like write a pretty long article about how, yep, no, that's certainly suspicious and not suspicious, and all of this is these are all good points. And at the very end, I'll be like, yeah, but here's the official story. But basically, yeah. Have you tried messing around with ChatGPT or any AIs about 9/11 Truth and whatnot?
I haven't done any of the chatbots. I've been in the image generation now that they just included it into Photoshop beta. But I just tell people right outright, it's not really truly artificial intelligence. It's all being programmed by people.
Yeah, it's still programmed.
Okay? Yeah, so it's all basically algorithmic responses based on programming. And that's why we can't trust the AI. I mean, if it's not going to tell you the truth about 9/11, it's going to carry the official narrative or the authoritative narrative of everything. Well, that's just a way to control people. That's not actually intelligence, and it's certainly not consciousness, which is the next thing they're going to try to push on us. It's a wild time, man. Like, we're basically in like Running Man times. Like, deep fakes are real. Voice technology is real in real time, and they're becoming commercially available. And the tools are extremely powerful for those that are utilizing them.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for that. Sorry, I hung up on. All right, the phone lines are lighting up, so we're just gonna keep answering these calls as they come in. Thank you again. Hello. Thanks for calling Low Value Mail.
What's up? What's up, Danny?
Hey, what's up, man? Just 1 second while we patch you through, and you are on with Jason, who we're speaking with.
Okay, cool. My name's Junior, man. I'm from Atlanta out here.
What's up, Junior?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to call about like 9/11. I guess I'll start. I mean, he was saying, like, I guess Jason, I've never seen him before, but yeah, I mean, like, it's cool, but like he was saying, like, we can't simplify as in like, oh, it was an inside job. I mean, like, and then he went off to saying all these other groups and stuff. I'm like, we can simplify it as that. Like, it was an inside job. Like, the United Nations are trying to build a one world government. Like, it doesn't matter about the little other tiny groups. It's all one giant group, like, that is trying to control us and putting in these plans to, you know, get us to that one world government. So it's like,
well, I'll say
all those little groups.
I have a whole film called Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, that goes into the historical nature of that term, New World Order, which is over 100 years old and based in collectivism. And I would agree with you that there is a predator class or cabal that is trying to bring that about. And 9/11 is simply one modus operandi into bringing that into fruition. But when we're talking about the down and dirty, the nitty gritty tactics to simplify it and say inside job as in just the U.S. government, that's not how it happened. And, you know, you got to talk about from the patsy level to the operational level to the cover up level. And that's why I made a follow up to Loose Change that is very different in the topics that are discussed and break that down. So, you know, I'm certainly not coming down on people that use that term. Lord knows I've used it and worn shirts that said it. But at the same time, I think it's good to have nuance so people understand that I'm not saying that George Bush did anything. You know, he's just another in there doing the bidding of that administration, which was really an extension of his father's administration. People like, you know, Karl Rove that are still around today, they're dangerous, man. People like Bill Barr, John Bolton, they're dangerous, and they're remnants of. So, you know, I guess when I talk about these things, I try to do so in a manner that people can kind of look up these specific groups and the specific roles and make decisions for themselves.
Yeah. So they can add it all up and eventually get to the bigger, New World Order or whatever it is. I mean, but I mean, another thing I was going to say is, like, I mean, you see those frames that y'all were talking about, there is no plane there, not even really. I mean, I don't see how you could even see there's a plane. I mean, there's missile. And then on 9/11, I don't believe there was not any plane. You were talking about a plane crashing into the buildings. I don't even think there was any plane, not two planes, nothing. There was, like, I don't know if you've seen other images of like CGI, the plane.
Where that comes from.
Colin, I'm gonna let you go so you can listen, but thanks for calling in.
So, all right, the no planes.
Yeah, because I've been seeing that where people, I think someone, one of the, I don't know if it was.
Back, damn it.
Yeah, people are just like, there was no planes.
No. So let me tell you where that comes from. That comes from a guy named Nico Haupt, who I actually met at the same time that I met Luke Rudowski. Long before the term 9/11 truther existed, or even We Are Change existed, we were part of a group called 9/11, I think 9/11 Truth Now or something like that. It was an action group in New York City that we would go down and visit. And there was an individual there named Nico Haupt, who maybe he was Dutch or something, tall, lanky guy. I'd never met him. He started talking our ear off about this thing called Westcam, and he was talking about TV fakery. Now, he'd done some good work in the early days on a lot of the exercises and drills that would eventually come out more and more in documentation. So he starts talking about how they digitally superimpose this on a green screen. And let me just say this about Nico. Nico then is one of the guys that gets involved with Judy Wood and not only the no planes, but the directed energy weapons that I told you about. I remember we were interviewing a guy named Morgan Reynolds, who was part of the Bush administration. And he was pretty high level, like he was in the cabinet somewhere. And he started talking about 9/11 being, us being lied to. And then he went right to the no planes. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And I think that was planted disinformation. Haupt himself is a really weird character. Are you familiar with the internet entrepreneur from the 90s named Josh Harris by chance?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so Josh Harris kind of came up with the YouTube model before YouTube was even a thing. So he actually started this digital network where it was like television on the internet in the late 90s, but obviously the bandwidth wasn't there. But so many people had invested in him he became mega rich to the point where he opened up what was essentially a surveillance cult in the middle of New York City underground. Okay, and this is the
What do you mean by a surveillance cult?
There's a movie out there called We Live in Public Now. I think it's in 2010. I think for me to describe exactly what I just said, is it takes you down inside underground where they're all being filmed 24/7. They're showering in front of each other.
Sounds like Fish Tank.
It's very much like that. They're armed too, heavily armed. And they have a gun range. But here's where it gets weird, dude. So Josh Harris wanted to run psychological operations on the people there, right? It was a big experiment for him. It was a fun experiment, not just in surveillance, but also breaking people. So he actually hired a high-level former CIA interrogator, okay? So he had a white interrogation room. And lo and behold, Nico Hopt is part of this like experiment / cult. And there's a scene in We All Live in Public Now. Obviously, all this predates 9/11 because the cult gets broken up right before New Year's because they're worried about like a Marshall Applewhite mass suicide situation.
Yeah.
So the cops actually go down and raid it before.
This is in New York City?
Right in the middle of New York City, bro. It's crazy. You need to look into this. So anyway, in the interrogation room, Nico Hop's sitting there. This guy that I met through, again, the no plane guy, and he's in his underwear. And then all of a sudden the guy tells him to strip down bare ass, and he does. And he looks like the crazy person that I'm talking about. If that were the only 9/11 connection, that would be weird enough. But Josh Harris actually ends up being part of this weird art project prior to 9/11, where this group called Gelatin B.
Yeah, so someone asked about Gelatin B. We had someone ask about that. That was one of the questions that I had. I was just reading about that right before we started the show.
So it's so weird how all this stuff kind of comes weird full circle. So Josh Harris rents a private helicopter which flies around and is taping Gelatin B as they successfully take out one of the massive windows.
Yeah, on the 91st floor.
On the 91st floor. And then they built a ramp that went 4 feet out that was weighted on the side and then walked outside of the World Trade Center on the ramp and had pictures taken of it and made an art. Now,
and it was an art project. They were just like, it's an art project.
It was just an art project.
How hard were those windows I feel like those windows would be.
They show them doing it. Like there's actually a lecture by one of the Gelatin B guys that becomes a professor in another country talking about how they did it. And they were left alone. Like they basically walled off every other art person with these, what appear to be empty boxes of C4. Like they have these weird boxes that are not C4, but what are what do you light them with? You know what I'm talking about?
Like a fuse?
Yes, the fuses. They have fuse boxes all in there. So let me just type it in so people can see it. Josh Harris then says that the Mossad is watching him because of Gelatin B. And I think the Daily Mail did a story on it. Let's see if we can get the Daily Mail one, because that's the big one. Daily Mail. There it is. Internet mogul, yes, now lives in a grubby Vegas deal. So this is it right here. And he says that the FBI is watching him over his mysterious ties to the installation of 9/11. There's Harris here. And this right here behind me, right here, is the art students that got out on the 91st floor and took out a window and took pictures while Harris flowed around. And there they are right there with those fuse boxes there. So this is the window. Yeah, it's again one of those really weird things where you would think in a place that should have had security everywhere, that never could have happened, and yet it did.
Yeah, damn wild. Okay, we got another call. We are going to take. Hold on 1 second, please. 1 second, please. By the way, shout out to the Bad Luck Boys for the super chat. Appreciate you guys. Hello.
Hey, Danny, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up? You are on with Jason. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Danny, this is Chris. Hey, what's going on, Jason?
How we doing, brother?
I'm doing good, my man. Long-time fan, man.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
I call in every now and then to Danny's show, and I do gematria and occultic numbers and things like that. And I'm curious to know how much you put into the ritualistic symbolism behind the towers going down.
Sure. I think there might be something there. I mean, obviously, you have the Masonic rituals of building up towers and then tumbling them down. I know that there's a lot of people that worked with the numerology, and I don't like to get all spooky. I like to stick to the facts. But when I do talk about
no, for sure.
I just want to say that when I do talk about the occult, there is a reality in the sense that groups of people at the uppermost echelons are into these weird occultic rituals. And I point often to the Bohemian Grove. And by the way, not Moloch worship. I have their own annals. I'm only missing 2 of them now that span well over 100 years. It's absolutely the owl. And it's the owl because of wisdom and its ability to see in the darkness and of its predatory nature. So what really interests me about the club itself is that massive amounts of technology and geopolitical power come out of there. A lot of people don't understand that out of the Grove is where they started the Manhattan Project and recruited Oppenheimer.
Right.
So they brought Oppenheimer into the club, which is in San Francisco. It's like a little bar. I've been on the outside of it, filmed it, put in my film Invisible Empire. And then they brought him to the Grove to expand the project. So nuclear power literally comes out of this weird occultic group. Then, of course, you have them trained as young men. When I say them, I'm talking about usually Anglo-American establishment, waspy types with things like not only Skull and Bones, but Scroll and Key or Book and Snake that have these occult aspects. I think there's a good highlight in The Good Shepherd, for instance. For those that don't know, this is a film with Matt Damon and De Niro, and it depicts the beginnings of the Central Intelligence Agency. And it does so by showing you the OSS post-World War II integrating with the Yale Skull and Bones establishment and Deer Island, which is another one of these places. And it even highlights not only the occultic aspects, but the cross-dressing too, which they're 100% into and is a big part of it. The No Woman's Club. And, you know, I think that even some of the J. Edgar Hoover stuff is more than likely from the Grove and him being in plays. So
that's an interesting theory. I never heard that part of it. The J.
I mean, dude, I have some of the most high-level guys in drag in these books. Like, you know, so, you know, whether or not it was really a sexual thing or a part of that. So I always found that bizarre, right? Like, I think it's weird that our rocket program with Jack Parsons and these individuals somehow connected to the occult. So there, and again, man, like, you know, I'm not blind. I see all these weird rituals that go on in Hollywood and the music industry. I've read the Franklin scandal and the Franklin cover up.
That's wild.
That's really what turned me into being like, oh my God, this is dark and this is real. And Nick Bryant wrote the follow-up book, which is extremely well sourced. I keep in touch with Nick. I'm going to have him on the program soon. But
I was actually just talking with him, trying to get him on the show.
Yeah, he's got that new EpsteinJustice.com website he's waiting to launch before I can get him back on. But, you know, he's the guy that released the Black Book, you know, and nobody wanted to touch that. He had to get Gawker to do it. And then what happens to Gawker? They get sued into the ground by Peter Thiel via the Hulk Hogan case. So, you know, as far as the weirder aspects and the occult stuff, dude, I'm such a history buff that I just, you know, I watch Heroes channel. The Nazi stuff is very real. The Vril Society, you know, what were they really talking about when they were talking about the Ubermenschen? I mean, these people were talking about like a reality where human beings did live inside the hollow earth. And I'm not here to talk about hollow earth or flat earth or any of that stuff. I'm just saying throughout history, you have groups that have obtained and maintained power that have strong occult ties that are extremely bizarre.
Yeah. No,
absolutely. And just right before I let you go, just, you know, drop just a couple of those things. You know, Danny, I don't remember last time we were talking about the number 33.
Yeah. And
the towers were made or started production in 1968. 33 years later, they come down. 1968 was the first year that 9/11 was declared the phone call for police emergency. So you have then you had the 2 towers, the 1 and the 1, the 11. They called it the New Pearl Harbor, which is on 12/7. Towers 1, Towers 2, Tower 7 goes down. So there's so many things. I mean, that's just surface scratching, but I was always curious because I always listen to a lot of Jason stuff, and I was always curious to know if you kind of just look into some of the other small little rituals because, I mean, yes, there are many people, but at the end of the day, I do believe that every big event that happens is predestined, pre-planned, and is tied in with occultic knowledge. So I was always curious. I was always a big fan, Jason, so I love what you do.
All right, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, the Gematria, there's this guy on Twitter who I want to get on the show. The Gematria stuff's wild. But it can never predict stuff. It's always after the fact where they go, here's all the things. I go, well, why don't you predict things? That's always my gripe with Gematria, but I do enjoy it. 1 second, please. Oh, sorry. We got a call. Hello?
Hello?
Hey, what's up? 1 second, please. All right, we got another caller. You are on with Jason.
Hey, Jason. Danny, nice to speak on you. I've been a long-time listener.
How's it going?
Good. This is Jonathan from Florida. But I wanted to ask Jason if he's ever looked in. I know he was kind of talking about I know she might be a little crazy with Dr. Judy Wood, but it is pretty interesting. The one thing that's just so strange is how that hurricane on the day of 9/11 just completely diverted the opposite direction.
That by the way,
bizarre.
Could you fill us in on that one? I don't know. I'm unfamiliar.
So what he's talking about is, and that's real, by the way, that there was a hurricane headed straight for the coast and then it just kind of like tails off. Look, Dr. Ben Livingston is the godfather of weaponized warfare with weather. They were doing experiments. He was flying into hurricanes in the 50s. For anyone that's never seen it, it's an old school one, but I actually worked at InfoWars at the time, so I remember it. Jones went and visited Ben Livingston. Okay. If you don't think that they have real weather manipulation weapons, go check that interview out. He's sitting there with a book this big of just photographs of the things that he was doing back in the day that had been semi-declassified and declassified. And I do think that the technology is there to manage, knock out most hurricanes and weather, create that weather, whether they do that on purpose or not. I'm not saying that they are or they aren't. I'm saying the technology exists. And
I think they definitely do that.
Yeah, and I would say the shade.
That's not a question.
No, so are we saying that they stopped the hurricane on 9/11 because that interfered with their plans for the day? Or is that, or I'm sorry, is that the theory from, I guess?
Theory. That's the theory. Again, you can go watch the weather. I mean, it's out there. You can watch
that is, by the way, if that is true, that is fucking wild. Whether they had this whole crazy thing planned.
For New York City.
But they had this whole crazy thing planned.
Straight for New York City.
And then it's almost like God intervenes and they're like, not today. And they're like, not today. Yes, today, actually. And they shut it down. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's like science fiction, literally.
Yeah. Well, as far as Wood goes, dude, let me, I didn't even bring this up because I don't like bashing people, but I remember at one point that this video I haven't been able to find, but Judy Wood and Nico Hop were so insane. They made this video in the dark in her apartment where Nico Hopt is again in his underwear for some reason, but he has a scary Halloween pumpkin mask on. And they're sitting there talking about TV fakery and no planes and space beams. Judy's a little crazy, dude. And let me say this too. That's not to knock crazy people, because I've met a lot of people over the last almost 20 years in science fields, especially like Judy Mikowitz is another one. I find that a lot of these scientists do have quirks and are a little bit socially eccentric. So I'm not disregarding her stuff because of that. I just really believe that a lot of it is inconsistent. Although, like I said, I don't necessarily think it's just thermite, and I am open to other possibilities. I just think that she's also believes in the no planes. She's a no planer altogether. She believes no planes hit the towers.
And so what? And what did people like? What's on the videos? Just it's all AI.
They say it's CGI, live time, cutout fakery.
We had a similar. I don't know. Do you know Human Vibrations?
I've not heard of that person.
She was on the show maybe like a month and change ago. She believes that John Benet Ramsey never actually existed. And it's like similar. It's like a similar vein though, where it's like everything, and it's all like CGI. And John Benet Ramsey's father was like worked for this big like defense contractor, and they were all into this computer graphic imaging shit. And
I've heard some of the theories, and here's the deal, man. Like, you know, I left InfoWars just before Sandy Hook, 2011, right before that went down.
Good timing.
And I was very much in contact with people that worked there and worked there for several years after. And I still am. Like, me and Rob Dew are good buddies and we talk. But I remember, and I did a lot of extensive work, and I think there are real questions to be asked there, but I never questioned whether or not children died.
Yeah.
Because I watched not only the raw footage all that day, but I watched instead of just YouTube clips, I watched the coroner talk for an hour and a half about how he just had to look at all these dead kids. And then a year after, a lot of people don't know this, but the FBI released a huge data dump, and a lot of stuff was blacked out. But there was a lot of video there, PDF files, pictures in the home where Lanza had killed his mother and all these other things. And I went through them, you know? I mean, I wasn't just going to say things. I went through them, and I went on air, and I did talk about some of the real anomalies in which I believe that some of the teachers were actually targeted. I actually do believe, after looking especially at the home of Lanza and some of the cards there, that Lanza's mother did work there for some reason at some point doing something. And those reports were in the beginning, and then they kind of went away and said that she didn't work there. But it did appear that
work at the school?
Yeah, she worked at the school.
Oh, okay.
She had like thank you notes from all these students and stuff for her.
Yeah, but like parents volunteer at schools and stuff. That's not.
And there were interviews with other townspeople after the fact that said that no, she absolutely did work there. I'm just saying. I mean, I got the impression that the mother was more involved with the school. Then you look at some of the teachers that were killed, and their cars were shot up too, where other cars weren't in the same areas of the parking lot. I always found that bizarre. A lot of people are unaware that there were 3 doors open and that there were black cloaks on the ground outside of the cars. And the initial reports, and I play the report, they said that it was members of dressed like clergy that came into the school and knocked on the door. Now, what makes that even weirder, okay, is that there's actually police audio of them chasing a purple van in which people are dressed up by like nuns as suspects, and they're headed towards Danbury, Connecticut. Weirder still is that a bunch of nuns show up to Sandy Hook before the police because they get a call, I believe it's Clive Cussler's church, that something had happened there. And so I think possibly to confuse the situation, separate nuns showed up if there was something else. And I'm not saying that Lanza wasn't involved. I truly believe he was. I just think there's a possibility that there may have been other shooters. They certainly detained other people. They detained an off-duty police officer. They had him in the car. There's obviously the footage of the people they chased into the woods. And then there's the Danbury, Connecticut incident. So all those things I thought were extremely valid to explore. They didn't want to explore them. Instead, they went the crisis actor route and the school being closed, and all that stuff I knew was complete and utter bullshit.
Huh.
Yeah, I know. I actually have a whole video breaking it down from Alex Jones's deposition.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like 3 years ago when he gave the deposition, I have a video called, I think it's Shady Hook and Deep Research. And this is before me and Alex kind of got back together, because sometimes I host the 4th hour there too now.
Oh, okay, cool. Anything else? Anything else, our caller?
Oh yeah, I was going to say one more thing, just about you were talking about the different factions, or you're talking about the different people that were possibly involved in 9/11. But I wanted just to present. I kind of think it's actually kind of what I think these things work like a mob turf war in some sense.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. A lot of people wanted me to bring up the mafia, so we can get to that after you. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm just talking about like it's like kind of a it's kind of like a metaphor for how this works, because I think you have like 3 or 4 different sides that are actually kind of duking it out in terms of like owning the narrative when it comes to these things. That's why it gets so complicated, is that you have various factions that just have different interests, and they all know that there's something going on, so they all kind of like input things into the either on the day of the event or after the fact, just to kind of twist it all up and make everyone just go kind of nuts in the process. But anyway, that's my own theory.
All right.
Thanks for
cool.
for listening.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
All right. See ya.
Take care. All right, we got. Thank you again for joining us. This has been excellent show. I think people are pretty pumped. We got a little more time left, about 20 more minutes. Phone lines are open. I almost gave the. I think I was maybe about to give my personal number. All right, we got a caller right here. 1 second, please, Jason. Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, what's up? 1 second while we patch you through. All right, you're on with Jason.
Hey, Jason. I'm just another one of those pesky globalists.
Globalist is in the. We had Flat Earth Dave on. Still my favorite thing today, and he calls people who believe in a round Earth globalists.
Oh boy, yeah. No, I've been on the program with him as well. I of the unwanted of the. Listen, you want to know why I am sympathetic to the flat earthers? I used to just really get upset, right?
Yeah.
When it started infiltrating like a decade ago, obviously I don't want to be associated with that. I hate the term truther. I hate all that. But here's where I am sympathetic. There's two reasons. Okay. Number one. All right. Now, if you believe mainline science, they tell us what? That we could live in a simulation. The simulation theory is now accepted. Okay. If we live in a simulation, we don't live on a globe. Okay. And by the way, I'm not simulation theory. I think it's total bullshit. I think there's a flesh and blood reality. I think we live through it. We make our own decisions. One shot at the title. What happens after this? Who knows? I believe in good and evil. God knows. But again, like if you're playing a video game, right? That open world is still on a flat plane. That's how you program it. I went to school for 3D graphic design. So like if we're in a simulation, we're not on a globe. That's one. Two, what's the other big thing they're trying to push on us? The multiverse, right?
Yeah.
Infinite possibilities of infinite worlds. And if that's true, well, there has to be at least one reality where we are literally on a flat disc or a turtle's back or something.
Yeah, or whatever it is and then all the stuff on the edges, the ice walls.
Yeah, we're out in the outer world. They have to exist if the multiverse exists because it's infinite possibilities in an infinite realm. And I don't believe that either. So those are the two. And the third thing is we've been lied to about so much. I get why you're skeptical.
Yeah, for sure. That's where it comes from. I think people are getting lied to about so much stuff and they go, well, they're like, maybe it's possible. Anyways, caller, sorry about that. What's your question for Jason?
So yeah, I just want to preface first off, like, I don't have like any connection to 9/11. I'm not like Saudi. I'm not like a Pete Davidson having like a firefighter head. But my thing is like when I immigrated to the country, I flew into New York City. I saw the towers, and I remember like I was a little kid. I saw it on the news, the planes hitting and everything, and then that same day we're in school talking about like, yo, what the fuck did we just see on the TV? But my whole thing is like, I mean, there's always been so many different conflicting stories. Like, for instance, you guys are talking about Flight 93, and my thing is everything in all my different thoughts on 9/11 is like, well, there are these questions y'all can't answer. Like, for instance, Flight 93, the flight air traffic controllers who were in charge of those F-16s sent to intercept that plane. They were asked, the air traffic controllers, like, did they land loaded, like with armament, like, air-to-air missiles and stuff like that? They said they couldn't answer that. All they could say is the planes landed unloaded, like without any arms. And my only question is, how can two fighter jets make a commercial airliner land without any missiles? I mean, that's just one. The other thing, like my whole overall theory is like, America knew it was going to be happening because obviously all the writings of Osama bin Laden, Muhammad Atta, all those guys talking about like they're against American expansionism with U.S. embassies and military bases across Pan Arabia. Also, BBC announcing the collapse of Building 7 when it was still up on the video feed.
Yeah, that one's crazy. Where they just has there ever been an explanation for that from like BBC reported nothing? They just go like that just didn't. How do you do?
Don't know about that. You had a live feed on the afternoon of 9/11 where they were reporting that the Solomon Brothers building had gone down. Then they cut to a reporter on the scene live, And the Solomon Brothers building is building 7. It is clearly still above her. It will be for another, I believe, 10 minutes or so. And as he begins to talk to her about it, that feed cuts live, maybe, again, about 10 minutes before the building actually comes down. So what does that mean? That means to me, obviously, somebody had foreknowledge that the building was definitely coming down and that they were getting that out over the press wire. And somehow that information got to that press wire a little early. I mean, that's the adult explanation of that. Okay. And there has never been an actual reason given as to why that happened.
Right. Right. And Jason, speaking of Building 7, are you familiar with the individual by the name of Barry Jennings?
I'm the one
He was a black guy.
Yeah, I'm the one that interviewed him. That interview is me. So if you've seen the Barry Jennings interview, that's Dylan. We went
on the street when he's like, praise Allah, I made it out of the elevators. And
that's how
boom, boom, boom.
him. So that's how we found him. So for what he's talking about is Barry Jennings and Rudy Giuliani's right-hand man, Michael Hess, who was the city corporation counsel, I think, something like that. He was very high up in the administration, got stuck in Building 7 after a bomb went off when they tried to leave. So they went to the emergency operations center, and they got stuck there because they started walking down to I believe he said, the 8th floor, and that's where the explosion happened from underneath them. They were able to knock out a window, get somebody, and the NYPD, or I'm sorry, NYFD ended up getting them out of there. Actually, NYPD as well, if I remember correctly. And they stepped over dead bodies. There were dead bodies in the building, 100%. They blew that building up too. So they killed people in Building 7 before they blew it up, and then they never acknowledged they killed people. Then Barry Jennings, after we put the interview out in full, you can see it in Fabled Enemies. It's in there. It's towards the end in the World Trade Center 7 section. He went on the BBC and recanted and said he never told us the things that he told us, despite us having it on film. Now, this guy got the key to the city because of that. And after he recanted it, he died 6 months later of fast
mysteriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died mysteriously.
That sounds wild. But he got interviewed by the BBC, and I was down at I believe it was the 6th anniversary of 9/11, and the BBC reporter that had interviewed him was down there. And I asked him if he had heard from Barry yet, because we hadn't heard from him in months. And he's like, no, but I'm sure he's okay. He was dead by then. Just want everybody to know that.
Wow.
You can't make that up. James Corbett actually made a documentary on Barry Jennings and his situation alone. It's about 20 minutes long. Very worth anybody else's time.
Wow, shit.
Yeah, and what I mean, everything on like that they took on film that day was weird. Like especially like there were guys like dressed up like what the Hollywood stereotype of a Secret Service agent is, and they were asked like, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And they're like, "Hey, we're just reporting." And so my last final question, I think I would like to ask both of you guys. So it's really coming to a point where there's insurmountable evidence that everything we're being told is not true. How would you guys feel better if not just our government, our nation state of America, but like all the other evil regime empires around the world, because they're all evil just at the end of the day, how would y'all feel if they were just open and honest about what they were doing? Like, hey, like instead of carrying out, like, hey, we want to have fun blowing up the world, and you guys are gonna fall in line with that. Like,
I think that's a different type of civilization. I think like you live in a different type of country when they're like openly doing that shit. Like you just go, hey, we're gonna do this.
But what I feel is unique about America is America's like, hey, look at the globe. Again, globe. Look at the globe. We have an ocean. We have Canada and Mexico. Like, come try and touch us. That's already a physical burden against foreign nations. And then the other thing is like, dude, how can you not call America the best nation on earth for liberties, even though we erode them with things like Patriot Act and surveillance? But it's like compared to what other nation? So it's like America literally could be like, we can still exact our power all over the world, and if we're just open about it and we stop lying and running cover and saying, oh, we're doing it for this instead of that. What if in 2003 Bush was like, you know what, my buddy here, Cheney, he wants to get some of that sweet, sweet black gold out of underneath Iraq. We're going to do that, and y'all going to be happy. And
Well, yeah.
Is that a world that can exist?
No, hopefully not.
No, I don't think it's a world that could exist. I think that, again, even when other countries do these sorts of things, they're still telling, I mean, look at North Korea. They're still feeding propaganda to the general populace. That's just the norm. And at the end of the day, this is, in my opinion, it's more than just global governance. It is a plan for transhumanism. It is a plan to shape the very species of humanity through a command and control system, one of track, trace, database that goes beyond what we have now and under the skin, and regimented by a social carbon credit score under the guise of what global warming and everything's going to end, and people are bad. And that's what they've said, man. They said there's too many people doing too many things.
And the last thing I did remember, I do have a somewhat proximal relation to something similar to 9/11. So after the first, so I'm an immigrant from Russia, and I was born and I grew up in Moscow. After the first Chechen War, there was still, just civic and governmental instability in Russia. But during the late 90s, there were apartment bombings in Moscow. And in Moscow, everyone lived in apartments, like those typical Soviet-style block apartments. And those bombings were used to justify the Second Chechen War, except it always, there's been bits and spatters and rumors and then photographs when things came out that the explosives used, the material left behind was stuff that was like very newly produced Russian ordnance. And the only way you can get it is either from the government or you pay off some sort of local military commander, because everything was pretty much black market. We're talking about 90s Russia. Yeah. So I do believe that, and I kind of do see that America knew that the Arab war, like the Islamist, extremist Arab world, had it out for America, and they worked on that opportunity. That's my thing. They knew it was going to happen, let it happen.
All right, thanks, caller. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with them. I guess my one thing is, I'm like, could they have done it other ways than? I mean, it makes sense for New York City because you probably want to like attack.
Well, list, dude.
Like, why don't you just take out the fucking Statue of Liberty? It does the same thing. That was on the
list. So listen, there's an actual list of 12 different targets, including the Sears Tower. That was listen, our intel community absolutely have. There's a great book called The Big Wedding by Sander Hicks, and it gets into this very bizarre naval intelligence officer that tried to blow the whistle on these dozen targets prior to 9/11. That's not, now I might disregard that guy because he's very shady, and the book even paints him as shady, and I've met Sander and he's done good work, but whether or not that's true doesn't matter. Paris Glendening, who's the governor of Maryland, their law enforcement, their police got the list before any of the attacks happened. And the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Sears Tower, all on it. Yeah. And that's something that's not really talked about. It's in my film, Fabled Enemies. Glendening comes on television via phone and discusses it.
Yeah. And was the White House on there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we got another call here. Thank you again, Jason. 1 second. Hello.
Hey, what's up, Danny? What's up, Jason?
Yo, thanks, Walby. 1 second. All right, you are on with Jason.
Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on. Great show tonight.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
Hey, I wanted to ask you something weird that I was reading about that I wanted to just see if you heard anything about this. There's apparently some U.S. construction companies that were involved with the original construction of the World Trade Center. They were also involved in some, what do they call it? It's like public housing, like in the same area a few years prior. And there was like some big issue where like in that public housing, there were windows that were falling out and balconies that were collapsing. And there was like a big rent strike. They had to like sue the construction companies. But anyway, I didn't know if any of your research, if you come across anything where, I don't know, maybe you could speculate, or if you know anything about like the mafia being involved in those construction companies involved with the World Trade Center like doing what we hear about what they do.
Whether or not the mafia was involved in the construction, the buildings did have outdated codes, and asbestos removal would have been a nightmare. It's one of the things that you discussed. As far as security and really the building stuff, I would point everybody, if they really want to get into a deep dive into the Dark Overlord documents that came out in, I believe it was all the way I think it was in 2019. I think it was January 1st, 2019, they started to leak. And those gave us privy to some of the court documents with Larry Silverstein, his multiple lawsuits, because he tried to sue, I think, for 3 disasters instead of 1, owning Building 7, I believe, in 1 and 2. So he definitely tried to get his money there. I would say this, man, our entire government system, the military industrial complex itself, is the mafia. They are the true.
Oh, without question.
And I think that that's one of the things that people can't wrap their heads around, because we've been trained and taught to not look at them like an organized criminal organization. When if you actually look at the numbers, I mean, no matter how ruthless of a capo you are, no matter how many Sammy the Bulls there are, it's one drone strike that does their work in an afternoon. So
yeah,
who are the real killers?
Yeah.
No, I hear that. I just something I stumbled upon, wanted to hear about that. Well, I appreciate everything you do, man, and thanks for taking the call.
Thanks, Wallaby. Thanks, Wallaby, everybody who does some of the music for us. All right, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more calls if anybody wants to call in. So where can people find you? Just
Yeah, I am live Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. I know, pun intended. We actually moved the show from 8 to 10, and that just kind of happened. But I'm also about to start hosting another show that I'm going to be doing 5 days a week. I'm not sure when in the afternoon that airs, but I put on a suit jacket and I act like I'm a real news person on that one. So that's Making Sense of the Madness for American Media Periscope. And Danny,
yes,
there's
sir.
one story I think that we need to go over that just should show you what a fucktarded world we live in and how deep conspiracies really go and how open conspiracies are.
You want to take a call? You want to take a call first, or you want to tell the story first?
Let's take the call first.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, hold on. Hello? Oh, why'd that not work? Hello? I don't know what just happened here. Oh, let's try this one. Sorry about that. We got a little technical difficulty here. Hello?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Jason.
No, sorry. 1 second. Just we got to patch you through. All right, sorry. We had a little technical issue, but you are on with Jason. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah. Hey, been following your work for a long time. Hey, what about that guy that was interviewed the day of 9/11 after the towers had collapsed, and he's the one that basically set that narrative for the jet fuel being the cause of the towers collapsing.
So did you know that gentleman? Do
you remember that guy?
Local news reporter. Yeah, I forget what affiliate he is, but he was a local New York City news reporter. He was
it was a guy that they were interviewing.
Yeah, and he's
who was very confident, right? Well, there's also another video of him about 10 years later in an LAX shooting where he's being interviewed again. And he's mentioning how he doesn't have his identification, his airline tickets, his passport, and he's being questioned by the police, but they just let him go in the middle of an investigation of a shooting at LAX.
Well, let me say
then there's a video, you can find it on YouTube.
Let me just say that. Yeah. I know which video you're talking about. I do not know that they are the same gentleman, but what I did pull up right here behind me is the initial video you're talking about. And yes, he's being interviewed as an eyewitness, but his name is actually Mark Walsh. Harley Guy is Mark Walsh, and he was a Fox freelancer that actually worked for Fox News in New York City. And this is the interview you're discussing where I think that's Rick Leventhal, another Fox person, interviewing him, where he gives the official version as to why the towers fell, and it was due to the heat from the planes.
Yeah, like so confidently just setting that narrative right from the get-go.
Yep.
And then, but when you do look at that LAX shooting, it's like the voice, the face, like everything is just identical, and it kind of goes into the whole crisis actor thing. And I know that it's a mixed bag of nuts, but yeah, it's just a very interesting thing.
I'm not sure they're the same person, but I can tell you that he is a news reporter. He does give the official version on 9/11 without any scientific knowledge, and I think I can just leave it at that.
Yeah. But hey, man, thanks for taking the call. That's just I admire your work. Been following it for years.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for calling. All right, let's hear this story, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Oh, you know what? Can we take one more call? This guy's been calling all night, and he has not managed to get through. I feel bad. All right, one more caller. Hello, caller. You're the last caller of the evening. Who are we speaking with?
Yes. Hey, what's up? It's Dylan.
Hey, just 1 second. All right, you are on with Jason, last caller of the night.
Oh, beautiful. What's up, Jason? Danny?
Hey.
It's been a great show.
Thank you.
Two quick things I want to say, or maybe, I'm sorry, 3 quick things. I'm really impressed by the caller 2 callers ago about 99. And I think that kind of speaks to maybe not involvements of certain countries, but maybe why they've kept quiet on the situation. They have some perfectly good, if countries like Russia and China are adversaries, they have some good fuel to like incite the people against the government. So I think there's something to be said about that. I think a good Google search people can do, molybdenum, USGS 9/11. And then my third and final thing, I think we need to think about the actual vaporization of like human beings that day and how they keep, well, maybe not keep, but in the years since the event, they have found human bone fragments on adjacent buildings hundreds of yards away, like the Deutsche Bank building. Back in 2005, 2006, they found hundreds of fragments of bones. And
really,
that's something I don't think, yes. And I think that doesn't like follow with the, what do you call it? The story we're told.
The narrative, yeah.
Yeah, the narrative. And that's kind of my final thing. And please, if you have any thoughts on that, Jason, I'd love to hear them. And I'll take the reply off call. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Thanks, caller.
So as far as a cremation effect, actually, I wish I had it with me. I brought it up many times, but the Bakarsky gentleman that talks about the 2,700 degree temperatures at the World Trade Center, he talks about it being like a cremation effect and how they are finding just small bone fragments. Dylan Avery, who's really the driving force behind Loose Change, recently made 2 other 9/11 films, one just on Building 7 and the Alaska Fairbanks study, and another with Bob McIlvaine about the death of his son, where his son was blown apart. I mean, he was, and it's a tough one. So yeah, no, those are valid concerns. And you talked about the 99 thing. Look, all nation states use false flags, and yes, Russia did bomb their own buildings with the FSB. That's a real thing. So again, listen, power is a vacuum, and unfortunately, people that hit the apex of power often do psychopathic and sociopathic things. They are willing to do whatever to get there.
Yeah, and to keep it.
Yeah, that's right.
And probably even crazier stuff to keep it than to get there.
Well, they don't want to give it up.
Yeah. All right, what was that story you wanted to? All right, last story of the night,
brother. I want everybody out there to know that the UFC, Disney, WME Entertainment are all aware of the fact that their number one draw, Conor McGregor, that there is a multitude of evidence that he is a serial, brutal, violent rapist, and that he viciously raped a woman in Dublin in 2018 so badly that she was not only in the hospital for days after the fact, but she had to have a tampon surgically removed from her cervix.
What?
And he also anally raped her. And that is not the only woman. I have an entire thread on this, and it was in the foreign press. Let me read this for you. At the end of the day, there is no doubt the young lady suffered a horrendous ordeal. The examinations and all of the evidence, which includes, by the way, eyewitness testimony, he did it in front of people, and CCTV camera footage before and after the fact, shows that she was raped and very badly assaulted in that penthouse suite. This is not a small thread. This goes through the investigation of that one woman over and over. He actually turned himself in January 17th, almost a month after it happened, where he said it was consensual, and they let him go. And they never charged him, by the way. Now, I don't know about you, Danny, but I've never had consensual sex with a woman who ended up in the fucking hospital for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. On top of that, if you think that I'm lying about this incident with the cervix, these are leaked WhatsApp messages between members of the press and law enforcement officers who investigated it. And their numbers were public. That's how I found who these people were. Pippa Doyle is one of those reporters. Michael Dardis is one of those reporters.
Crazy.
Okay. And if you read through it, and they all know this, dude. He didn't use a condom. He came inside her, left her covered in bruises, and she had throat injuries, which were consistent with someone held in a choke hold like the ones he applied in the ring. His DNA was all over. He tried to ride her vaginally, rammed her tampon into her cervix. She had to have it surgically removed.
Jesus Christ.
So the guy that they're pumping all over the place with his whiskey and he's a big hero is a sick fuck. And if you got a mother, you got kids, you got a sister, I don't know how you could live with yourself. And Rogan, you know this, by the way, and I've met Joe, and I like Joe, but he knows it too, and they all know it.
And so why is there no criminal
millions of dollars to him? So all right, so tell you how they get away with it.
He's not even fighting anymore though. Like, has he not lost his value to them?
He's about to fight Michael Chandler. They're hyping up. It actually launches this week.
Oh.
That's why I'm bringing it up. The new Ultimate Fighter season. They weren't allowed to use his name in Europe because he hadn't been convicted. So RTE, which is a huge European outlet, actually had someone inside the leak that McGregor had been arrested, okay? And that he was this Irish sports star. They were talking about the rapes. Only 8% of sexual assaults in Ireland get convictions. In fact, a woman on the parliamentary floor, an MP, actually brought up the rapes and how he and his buddies were walking around raping with impunity because she wasn't the only one, dude. She's not the only one. Okay. There's a bunch of these cases. She turned down a ton of money. Okay. Everybody was saying she's a gold digger. And now she had to sue him here after they wouldn't bring criminal charges. There's another story that just happened from last year that the charges got dropped, where a woman on his boat allegedly had her arm broken here by McGregor as she was thrown off a boat and then rescued by Red Cross. Jesus and then Christ. She filed charges, and then all of a sudden her car got firebombed and her house got attacked. Drop those charges.
Wow. Crazy. Damn. Right? Ending this on a fucking spike in the mic. Jason. All right. Well, that has been the show, everybody. Thank you very much, dude, for coming on. And again, people can find you on Twitter at Jason Bermas, on your website, YouTube. They can find you everywhere. You're going to be out and about. And just so everybody knows, we are starting the after show in probably about 10 minutes, and it's going to be on this stream. So don't go anywhere. If you want to join the after show, it's going to be on this stream. 10 minutes. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to be back. It's the first time we've doing it like this. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jason. If you're not going to join us in the after show, have a good night. Otherwise, I'll see some of you there in 10 minutes. Later, everybody.